Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see you all coming on the line. It's Natalie Ashdown here with you as always. Happy Friday to you. Welcome to our coaching cafe, where today we're going to be exploring bad questions. What makes a question ineffective? I'm actually quite excited to present this topic to you today. I'm not sure why, but I think it might be because we are always focusing on good questions and high quality questions. And let's just take a look at the other side today and go, all right, what makes a question really bad? That's what we're aiming to do. If you are accumulating, first of all, if you're accumulating your CCE, your continuing coach education units for your ICF credential, the good news is that these webinars are available to you free. And if you're on the line the whole time and participating in our webinar this morning, then we can automatically now send you a CCE, so you'll be able to collect those as you go along, which is great news. The whole program actually has got CCEs, so you'll be able to collect those as you go along. So today our agenda is what makes an ineffective question. What's the impact on the coachee when a question is ineffective? And as we go along, we'll also look at, well, how can we reframe these questions? How can we fix them as we go along? For those of you that are new, welcome. I can see there's a few new people on the line. Welcome to our coaching cafes. We hold these every Friday, Melbourne time at 12 noon. We're really about creating a coaching community and sharing our learned experience and having some thought-provoking conversations. And the way that you can interact with me and the rest of the group is by popping a message into the chat box. So if you'd like to pop a message into the chat box, I can pick that up. I do love hearing your thoughts, your questions. I do love interacting with you. So please feel free just to go for it in the chat box with me. And of course, for all our regulars, thanks for coming back. Welcome back to you all. It's always great. I love checking in on a Friday with you all. It just makes me feel great because we know it's the last, I know it's the last big thing I have to do for the week, and then we've got the weekend. So thanks for sharing my Friday. Here we go. Let's talk about ineffective questions. Let's talk about what happens if a coach actually asks an ineffective question. It breaks rapport with the client straight away. And as you know, we're always trying to build rapport with the client. So an ineffective question can have that instant impact on breaking rapport. It creates defensiveness in the coachee. It can shut the coachee down. The thing that I also really am concerned about is in asking an ineffective question, it actually reduces choice. It reduces the options and the choice that the clients actually and our coachees actually have. So we're thinking about, well, if our job as coaches is to open up choice, is to open up options, then an ineffective question can have the exact opposite effect. And of course, we do often hear coaches when we're doing our coach training, like through our Certificate 4 in Workplace and Business Coaching or the diploma program, you know, pretty well much less in the diploma program. But, you know, with rookie coaches starting out, the coach actually being in the space. So they're actually asking questions, and in effect, they're taking away the space from the coachee to explore, and they're taking up all the airtime. Peter Drucker, the guru around this area, says that the most serious mistakes are not being made as a result of, what does he say? I've got it here. The most serious mistakes are not being made as a result of wrong answers. The truly dangerous thing is about asking the wrong question. So he would go so far as to say, you know, it's actually a dangerous thing to ask the wrong question. Now, it's interesting, that comment. You can jump in and let me know what you think, because sometimes you might think, well, there's no wrong or right question. But I do think that there is questions that can be more effective, or questions that actually can be ineffective. And so that's what we're really focusing on. How can we knock out and practice the more effective questions and knock out our ineffective questions? So let me know what you think about that. I'm still thinking about it myself. You know, is there any kind of wrong or right question? I'd rather not think about wrong or right. I'd rather think about effective questions and ones that could be more effective, or ones that are ineffective because they shut people down. Let me know your thoughts around that as well. So here we go. I actually, first of all, let me share with you Let me share with you my all-time favorite ineffective questions. Now, I'm not sure whether the word favorite is the right word to use here, but they are the all-time best, worst questions that I've heard. And for those of you that are listening on the phone, I can read them out to you as well. They're there on the screen. These questions were actually asked of me in actual training programs, so in coaching programs or in workshops that I was delivering around coaching and manager as coach, those kind of things. And actually, a couple of these questions were actually asked on our Certificate for Workplace and Business Coaching program, which would make these questions even worse, knowing the context and the work that we'd actually been doing to build effective questions. So I think they're in priority order here. I shouldn't be laughing, should I? They're terrible things to say. So I had a person within our coaching program, we were delivering a program, say to me, should we tell them, the graduates, should we tell them how bad it is around here, or should we just let them find out? So that should say me, them, not me. So should we tell them how bad it is around here, or should we just let them find out? Because we have to be honest, right? To which I actually said, I was actually taken back by this question, and I actually said, is that a serious question? Because this person in the program was that kind of joker. He was the kind of rebel rouser in the program, the one that was really resistant, that wasn't really coming on board, had all the reasons why coaching wasn't going to work, etc., etc. So he hadn't really shifted his mindset and come on board yet. And this was the question he asked. And he was serious. I said to him, my answer was, I think that question needs a reframe. And I just left it at that because I was so shocked at the time. This question came to me in a program we were delivering, a strengths workshop to a group. And this question they asked, seriously, what do you do when you know your team has no strengths? Like, when they have no strengths at all? Because that's what I'm dealing with. And again, I was really shocked. I realized the person was actually serious. My response back to that person was, I wonder, what would it be like to work with a manager who thinks I have no strengths? A manager who thinks I have no strengths at all. What would it be like to work with that kind of person? And that person didn't really talk to me for a little while after that. Funny about that. And one I got recently as well, when we're talking about, situational coaching, when do you coach, when do you not coach, that kind of thing, this person said, all right, I understand all that, but what do you do? Actually, this was in the options. So we're talking about, stay out of the space, let the coachee generate options. Don't jump in and give your advice and tell them what to do. Stay out of that. And the person said, well, that's all very well, but what do you do if they're just plain stupid and they've got no clue? To which I replied, well, I don't never refer to my coachees as stupid. I never think that they've got no clue. My job is to focus on bringing out the best in them. And he didn't talk to me for a while after that as well. So these are kind of, my all-time ineffective questions and my all-time responses. Jodie's jumping in, thank you. Yeah, so let me know what you think about those. Were you as shocked as I was to actually hear these in a training program? And Jodie's jumping in saying, in my experience, it does seem possible to recover from an ineffective question, especially if you have good rapport, by catching it straight away, pointing out that it's not a good question and that you'll take some time to come up with a better one. Jodie, we just need to use those comments you've just said there as a beautiful summary for the actual whole webinar we have today. I totally agree with you. I think you can recover from an ineffective question. I think you can say, actually, that question wasn't really that well worded. Let me try to rephrase that, or maybe that didn't come across the way it was intended. So that's a lovely summary. Thank you. She's giving me an awesome happy face. It's great. Pointing out it's not a good question. I don't mind doing that. I've actually done that in coaching conversations, pointed out that it's not a good question and said, and then just actually taken the time to come up with a better one. So thank you. We'll come back to that. It's a lovely summary at the end. So I love Dilbert cartoons, as you know, and here's a favourite Dilbert cartoon on ineffective questions. So for those of you that aren't online, can't read this, let me read this for you. Dilbert comes up to the boss and says, "Can you look at this bid and let me know if I can order the hardware?" The boss looks at it and he says, "Yes." "Are you saying, yes, I can order the hardware, or yes, you'll look at it?" And the boss says, "Mumble, mumble, mumble." And Dilbert says, "What?" And the boss says, I need input. I need your input on my PowerPoint deck." And Dilbert says, "So far, in response to my request, you've given me ambiguity, mumbling, and a change of subject. Would you prefer that I badger you for an answer until I get angry, or should I return to my cubicle and resume being ineffective?" And he says, the boss says, "You ask too many questions." It always is better when you can actually read it and not. I love it too, Jodie. It's always better when you can read it and not have me read it to you. Now, here's the thing, right? I love Dilbert. I think Dilbert is asking ineffective questions. I think he's asking his boss closed questions. I think Dilbert's actually stacking his questions. So he says, "Can you look at this bid and let me know if I can order the hardware?" And the boss says, "Yes." "Are you saying, yes, I can order the hardware, or yes, you'll look at it?" So, unfortunately, I need to kind of I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. But unfortunately, I actually feel for the boss here, because Dilbert has actually asked a couple of stacked questions there. And then, of course, he gets frustrated and the boss says, "You asked too many questions." So anyway, a bit of a laugh for us on a Friday. So I have actually brainstormed all the types of ineffective questions, actually, and I managed, would you believe it, to come up with 16 different types of ineffective questions. I was really high performing, I think, in this regards, coming up with all these types of ineffective questions. Let's go through them together and see what we can come up with. All right, number one, and these are in no particular order, but number one, why questions. So we know that if you're just saying why, like why did you do that, with a particular tone, it actually can create defensiveness in our clients, in the people we're coaching. So that a question, why questions can be highly effective if they're well timed and if they're actually targeted at why is this so important? That really deeper type of question. But if it's just like, why did you do that? Why, those kind of things, creates defensiveness, makes people justify, starts shutting them down. Number two, closed questions. So we've had this example in a lot of training programs, or we've heard this example in a lot of training programs where people say, "Do you understand? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Do you understand?" And working with Air Force, hello to the Air Force people on the line. We know that we had some military skills instructors actually saying to the young graduates, to the young recruits, "Do you understand? Do you understand? Do you understand?" To which the recruits, if they're brand new into the military, are going to say yes, 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 yes. And then the instructor wondered why the recruits then went off and did something completely different. Of course, they thought they had a poor set of recruits, but what was really happening was an ineffective question. And they should have been asking, "What's your understanding?" or "How do you understand it?" or "Where's your understanding?" to check the understanding rather than getting a closed question, yes or no. Jump in if you want to ask any questions, or you've got things to add as well. Thought bubbles. So thought bubbles can be very ineffective when people are walking around going, "I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know what the point is. I don't know what's the point. I don't know what the boss is thinking." So we know as coaches, we talk about this on the Certificate for in Workplace Business Coaching program, we talk about taking those thought bubbles and turning them into effective questions. So we would be saying, instead of "I don't know what you're thinking," we would just ask, "Well, what is the thinking here? How are you thinking about it? Where are your thoughts about this?" So that's a really easy a reframe on that one. It's a very easy flip to go from an ineffective statement, really, an ineffective question, to something that's more effective. Can you believe I came up with 16? Number 4, stacked. Now, for those of you that know, I had to work on stacked questions actually. When I was listening to my recordings that I was actually submitting for my MCC exam, I had to be very careful about stacked questions. It's a little, I feel like I've knocked it out as a habit as I've gone on because I'm really conscious of it. So this is actually a good, not a test, but a good piece of awareness for us. This webinar, I hope, is a good check-in. I hope you're checking in when you're listening about, do I do that? Have I been known to do that? Is that something that I want to make sure I don't do? And for me, when I'm working with you on this webinar, that's the one that I'm going to be watching out for as well. Stacked questions. So a stacked question is basically I'm asking 2 questions in the one. So what are you seeing, or what are you thinking, or what are your options around that? So that's a 3 stacked question. It's a beautiful set of pancakes, isn't it? We're layering those questions. It confuses the coachee because they don't know which one of those questions to answer first. If you're going to be working with an introverted person from an MBTI, like an ISTJ, an ESTJ, they like order. So more STJ kind of type personalities. They like order. So you don't want to be asking them several questions because they don't know which order to answer them in. Danielle says, I use closed questions. Oh, yes, of course. Yes, that's right. Danielle says, I use closed questions once my open questions have funneled the response. For example, what do you know about your options to move forward? Who could you leverage off? When will you do that? Do you need any help from me? I think they sometimes have a place. Yes, so that's that. I absolutely agree with you, Danielle. So what you're doing is you're asking your open questions and then you're using them as a bit of a funnel or a closer. Do you need any help from me, or what help do you need from me? Is there anything else we need to talk about? So that actually really works. She says, it's a great reminder, very stacked questions. I still find myself doing this. Sorry for my typo. No, don't worry about that. Yes, so that's actually a really effective use of a closed question. What I'm talking about is when people go, they actually ask multiple closed questions, and because of that, it's highly ineffective because it's kind of annoying. Was that Bob on the phone, or was that Mary on the phone, or was that Sally on the phone? And then the person goes, no, 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 and in the end, they answer, well, who was it? It was such and such. So it's kind of ineffective. You know, did you email them? No. Did you phone them? No. Did you do this? No. Then what did you do? Well, I haven't done anything yet. So it's kind of this backwards and forwards conversation that is kind of ineffective from that perspective. All right, number 4. Let's have a look at number 5. Number 5, swearing or inappropriate. So I'm very sensitive to people like the last question we had. So what do you have to do if they're just plain stupid, you know? Another thing I've heard is things like, and I heard a lot actually, I've been coaching the last 2 or 3 days, quite a lot of swearing in the questions. I don't think it's needed. And then, you know, kind of asking an effective question, a good question, an effective question, and then following it up with something like, so what do you think your options are, stupid? You know, like, can't you just stick to the first bit? What do you think your options are, and forget the stupid bit? So I think that's pretty obvious, that one. And yes, yeah, thanks for asking, Kath. Yes, these are all actual things that I've heard. That's why I was able to easily brainstorm them. Yeah. Next one, judgmental. So, you know, questions are really ineffective if they're laced with judgment. As coaches, we're not supposed to be judging or asking questions that are laced with judgment. So a question like, do you really think that's a good idea? Now, I can understand why you might say that. What we're talking about here is if you do it in a certain tone, then it is going to actually come across quite judgmental. So do you really think you should, like, if you say it like kind of like, I'm just wondering if you really think that that's a good idea based on what you're saying. Now, it's still, you're kind of trying to explore whether the client thinks it's a good idea. But if it's laced with judgment, like, do you really think that's a good idea? It's just not an effective question. The reframe in there, just swap that to what's the best idea here, or what will be the impact of your idea. So if you want to actually find out impact, you can ask about impact. That's no problem. We can ask about impact and whether people think that that's a risk or not. That's not a problem at all. But we just have to watch that it's not fully loaded. The next one we have is leading questions. So anyone that's done any sort of coaching will know that there's a lot of questions. They're actually leading questions. These are ones that are basically telling the person what you want. You're telling them what you want and the way it's going to be. So a leading question is, so can I have that by the end of the week? It's a closed question. It's a yes/no question, and at the same time, it's also leading the person to what you want. Have you tried looking into such and such? Have you tried looking into the policies and procedures on that? So basically, you're telling the person, look into the policies and procedures on that. And so it's not as effective as it could be. You'd be better off saying, so when can I have it? Or what policies and procedures do you need to look at? Or where can you find the information? Great. Feel free. If any of these are resonating with you, just let me know. Yeah. All right. More ineffective questions. Can you believe there's so many bad questions? Lack of empathy and tone. So I've already talked about that one. We have to watch our tone. We also have to watch our lack of empathy. Is that really what you think? Something like that. The thing with empathy for me, I could do a whole webinar on empathy actually. You see lack of empathy when coaches move to the next question without even taking in what the person has said. And we will be talking about coaching presence on one of our webinars. And the thing that we have to watch out, rookie coaches often just accept the data or whatever the client has said and then move on to the next question, which is fine because you're learning how to coach and you're learning the frameworks and the processes. But lack of empathy happens when someone actually shares something with you and you just keep moving on. Or you ask a question that's not related to or what they've actually just shared, or the tone comes out in a manner that doesn't really show that you care. It really just suggests that you're stepping on, you're moving on, you're going through a process rather than really partnering with people. So it's a good thing to think about, I think, from that perspective. Okay, we also have to watch out for questions that become ineffective because they're too direct. Now, we do like a direct question. We do like a well-formed direct question. There's no doubt about that. But if we don't have rapport or they're not timed well, a direct question can be very confrontational. It can really shut the person down. If you say, well, what's the truth? They're feeling judged. It breaks rapport. It's quite confrontational. So I believe in direct questions. I think we need to ask the direct questions, but just watch out that they're not ineffective because of your timing there, or they're not in rapport. You've kind of gotten frustrated as a coach and just asked the question. So we just have to watch that one, I think. All right, we're at the halfway point. Let me know if these questions are resonating with you, if you've got any thoughts about them at all. These are ineffective questions. I can see there's a lot of experienced coaches on the line. I'm sure that you've all experienced, you've all heard these questions in the workplace, and I'm pretty sure all of us have had to tighten up around these questions as well. Okay, let's continue. I've already just mentioned this one in relation to the previous one as well, with direct questions. Poor timing. So sometimes the questions are really poorly timed. What I mean by that is that you could ask a question that talks over the top of a person. You could be thinking about a question, but it's not related to what the person has actually said. So you kind of backtrack and go, oh, there's another question I wanted to ask you that was related to something you said earlier. I don't mind that, actually. I don't mind saying that kind of thing as long as your timing is correct, like as long as it's still relevant. So anything that is just kind of doesn't feel right in terms of where you're at within the conversation, I would put into poor timing. So with those kind of questions, we just have to think about those questions before we ask them and think about, is this the right time to answer this question? Do we have suitable rapport? Is the coachee in the right space? Is the conversation moving in the right? Is the conversation does the conversation allow for it? Is the coachee open? Is it the right question for what we're trying to do? And is it the right question for what the coachee needs right now is probably the best way to think about it. Danielle says, sadly, I've asked some of them before, sadly, I've asked some of them before, really growing my coaching toolkit. Yeah, I know you've got a sad face there, but don't worry about that. I've got my MCC now. So I've been coaching for 15 years and I still have to remind myself of this. So we're not trying to be perfect. We are really trying to be consistent in the way we go about asking questions. We're trying to practice and continually finesse our questions to make them more effective. So don't worry. I've been coaching for the last 4 days. I'm delivering a program and I stacked a couple of questions, So it's not about being perfect, but it is drawing our awareness to those things when we do it. And then, as you said, bringing them back, having a check-in on them, that kind of thing. All right, number 11, or this is a kind of annoying one for me. I need to really watch that I'm not doing this. I listened back to something I recorded last week or the week before, and I was horrified by the number of ors that I popped in. I need to really check that. So what we're talking about here is someone saying, so is that something you can do, or... and they kind of peter out, they kind of temper out. And to me, I always say, or what? Like, I think you're generating the options for me, so what's the other option? And I can be a bit annoying when I say, or what? But what we're really focusing on here is you're asking the question, you're saying, but you don't kind of finish it. So you are starting to give the client options, which we shouldn't be doing in the first place from an effective question point of view. And then you don't finish it. So is that something you can do, or something you can look at, or something you're thinking about, or, that's a stacked question. It's got an or, it's a closed question. It's annoying. So that's a really ineffective type. We've got to watch out for those. Kids do it. So if you're hanging around teenagers at the moment, big kids in the workplace, I hear a lot of people in the workplace do this as well, but this is a classic for the kids. Jody says these definitely make sense. Yes, the or pops up a bit too. Yeah. So I'm just checking myself that I'm not doing that I'm not offering options and petering it out. Would you like to go to breakfast, or you're thinking of what do you, or when you might as well just say, what would you like to do? What would you like to do this morning? Mm-hmm. Oh, now this one I might get in trouble for. Apologies to the Queenslanders, I think, on the line. Uh, this one is also where you're adding a confirmation. I'm calling it a leading confirmation. You add the word right on the end of a question, and what it's doing is it's leading the client to give you a confirmation, but it's a leading question. So it will sound like, so we're good to go, right? So we're good to go. So this is happening, right? So what you're saying is you're making a statement. So this is happening, right? You're leading the person to say, yes, this is happening, but you're doing the confirmation as opposed to the coachee doing the confirmation. A better question is to say, So what's happening, or how confident are you to move forward? So we can easily fix that one. And I say apologies to the Queenslanders because I think I hear this quite a bit when I go into state. So we're good to go, right? So we're okay. We're okay. We're right to go. That kind of thing. Which is okay when we're kind of just chatting to each other or talking to each other or getting into the car to go to school. Not so good when we're actually coaching someone because it's just ineffective shutting them down. Okay, let's keep moving. Watch out for the use of your pronouns. Watch out for the use of we instead of you. So what can we do? What can we do about it? What can we do about it? So what's happening there is you're saying, what can we do about it? When really we mean you. So I mean to say, what can you do about it? How can you move forward? But my question gets a bit ineffective because I'm asking we when I don't really mean we in the first place. Yes, Catherine, thank you. I'm glad I haven't offended the Queenslanders. She says it's a comfort word at the end of the sentence, right? So that word right is a comfort sentence at the end of a comfort word at the end of the sentence in Queensland. I can understand how it's used. Thank you. Alrighty, what else have we got here? Oh, here we go. This is one I have to watch out for. Overly wordy questions. So questions that seem to go on for, quite some time, they're 20 words or 30 words or 40 word questions. It confuses the client. They're overly worded. They're ineffective. And I, in particular, had to really, really watch this to my MCC. There's no doubt about it. So I had to really tighten up. So that's an obvious one. Number 15, we're almost there. I'm getting a bit tired of these ineffective questions. This is a really important one. It speaks to coaching presence in the ICF core competencies. Basically, what the question you're asking is not related to what the client was saying. That is also at that PCC or MCC level, that's an instant fail. At the ACC that level, they might let you get away with it, but that's an instant fail at the PCC or MCC level. If you ask a question that is totally unrelated to what the client was saying, breaks rapport, it's ineffective. Yeah, it's no good. Bad question. And finally, asking questions to fill the silence. So I see this a bit also in our Certificate 4 and Workplace and Business Coaching program, where people will ask a good question. It's actually a high quality question. But then because the client's actually thinking about it, because the coachee is thinking about it, the coach will jump in and ask another question. And I'm often saying, hold. Just hold on, they're thinking about it. So it becomes ineffective if you ask a really it becomes ineffective if you ask a really good question and then you jump in with another question just to fill up the space and fill in the silence. So we do need to watch that. You often see it kind of in more rookie coaches, but as experienced coaches on the line, we also have to watch out for that as well. So there you go. There's my 16 ineffective questions. I'm sure all of us on the line will have experienced those ineffective questions. Ask us asking those ineffective questions, and I'm sure the message from this webinar today is that I think our practice is to tighten up our questions, and I am actually conscious of that. I am always trying to tighten up my questions, make them a little bit less wordy, watch out for repeating my questions. I'm notorious for stating a question, liking the sound of it, and then restating it. So I'm not sure what you call that. It's kind of like a reframing the question, like a stacked, it's not really a stacked questions, but it's a reframed questions when you don't really need to do that. I got coached a lot on just ask the first question, trust the first question. And I said, yeah, I do trust my first question, but the second question always sounds better. So anyway, something to think about. Alrighty. Oh, look, we've got a bit of animation there. I don't know how that happened. Alrighty. So we're on time. We're just a bit over time. Have a think about the key takeaways, key actions you can do. things that you can tighten up around your questions. And please jump in last couple of minutes if there's any questions you have or other thoughts you have. That would be great. I will see you for our next webinar. I think we've got a break and then we'll be catching up again. So just watch out on the emails or the Facebook site. I think we have a break coming up. I'm not sure when it is, but watch out for that. Thanks very much for your time. Don't forget, we are running mental health first aid. So if you are interested in understanding the boundary between where does coaching finish, where do we stop coaching, and where do we start offering other forms of support, mental health first aid is really an essential skill, we believe, for people in the workplace and coaches in the workplace. So feel free to contact us about that. Stephanie says, thank you, happy Friday. Yay, great session. Thanks, Jody. So thanks, everyone. Great to be with you on the line today. It's Friday. Enjoy your weekends if you're listening to this live. And I look forward to catching up with you at our next coaching cafe. I'll say goodbye for now.